Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this City of St. Petersburg update on Hurricane Milton. I'm Ken Welch, Mayor of the city. I'm joined by our Council Chair, Deborah Fix Sanders, members of our leadership team, and our partners from Duke Energy, and we thank you all for being here. Even as we work to recover from the impacts of Hurricane Helene, our community now faces an even more daunting challenge with the approach of Hurricane Milton. Hurricane Milton is a Category 5 storm that will make landfall somewhere along the west coast of Florida. Now, this is a powerful storm, more powerful than Helene, with more potential storm surge than we experienced with Helene. If we take a direct hit from the storm, we should understand the realities. The recovery of power and services and the rebuilding process after this storm will be a challenge, and it will take time. But the most important thing at this point is to save lives. And we can do that by moving to a safe place and shelter if you are ordered to evacuate. Now, Pinellas County has called for mandatory evacuations for everyone in zones A, B, and C, and all mobile homes and businesses in those areas. Please heed all evacuation orders. This is an incredibly powerful storm. Now, St. Pete Police Department has started to canvass neighborhoods in the mandatory evacuation zones to inform them of the mandatory order. Additionally, tolls have been suspended to assist Floridians when evacuating. Tolls for major highways have been suspended in Citrus, Hernando, Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco counties, and they are suspended from Monday, October 7th until Monday, October 14th at noon. Now, the time to prepare is now. The storm will start bringing impacts to our state as soon as tomorrow evening. The county has opened a pet-friendly shelter for St. Pete residents who are evacuating at Gibbs High School. If you're planning on using a shelter, please bring all the necessary supplies and food that you and your family will need while in the shelter. The shelters are here for a reason. Please use them if you are in an evacuation zone. Now, given the timing and the potential impacts of the storm, first responders will not be able to reach you during the peak of this storm if you choose not to evacuate. If you are a special needs resident and need assistance getting to the shelter, please call the county information line at 727-464-4333. I want to talk a minute about our sewage treatment plants. Please be aware that we are anticipating between 8 to 12 feet of storm surge with Hurricane Milton, another record-breaking level of storm surge, and even more than we experienced during Hurricane Helene. Our sewer treatment plants have not and cannot operate in that level of floodwater. So that means that we may need to shut down the northeast and southwest sewer treatment facilities in order to prevent further damage to those systems. The decision to shut down the facilities will be made closer to the storm's landfall once we have a better idea of where exactly the storm is headed. This means if the plants are turned off in order to protect the equipment, residents will not be able to flush toilets, do laundry, take showers, etc. Depending on the level of storm surge and other impacts, it may take longer than 24 hours to restore the plants for this storm. Please keep that in mind when making your preparation plans. On to debris collection. To assist with Helene recovery, the city has opened a debris management site for residents and haulers to drop off storm debris. And I want to thank my team for putting this together so quickly. The address for that site is 1953 72nd Street North. As Milton continues to develop, the city is encouraging everyone to secure as much storm debris as possible. If you're going to visit the debris management site, please bring your driver's license or a water bill. And be prepared to unload the debris yourself as staff is unable to assist with the unloading. More information regarding the debris management site is available at stpete.org/Helene. This is a very serious storm that will significantly affect our area, and the time to prepare and evacuate is now. You do not have much time left. I know we're tired. I know we're still rebuilding from Helene, but please take all necessary precautions. to protect yourself and your loved ones and the things that are most important. We will rebuild. I'll now turn it over to Yolanda for a Spanish translation, followed by Amber Bolding, our Emergency Management Manager. Yolanda.
Mientras nos recuperamos de los efectos del huracán Helene, nuestra comunidad se enfrenta ahora con la llegada del huracán Milton. El momento de prepararse es ahora. La tormenta comenzará a traer impactos a nuestro estado tan pronto como mañana por la noche. Es una tormenta poderosa, más que Helene. Lo más importante en este momento es salvar vidas. El condado de Pinellas ha ordenado evacuaciones obligatorias para todos en las zonas A, B y C. Eso incluye casas móviles y negocios. Si desea evacuar, por favor, hágalo tan pronto como sea posible. La policía ha comenzado a avisar los barrios en esas zonas de evacuación. El condado ha abierto un refugio en Gibbs High School para los residentes con mascotas. Si usted planea ir a un refugio, por favor traiga todo lo necesario y los alimentos que usted y su familia van a necesitar. Los socorristas no podrán llegar a usted durante el pico de la tormenta si decide no evacuar. Si usted es un residente con necesidades especiales y necesita ayuda para llegar al refugio, por favor llame a la línea de información del condado al 727-464-4333. Tengan en cuenta que anticipamos entre 8 a 12 pies de marejada ciclónica con el huracán Milton. Este es un nivel histórico. Nuestras plantas de tratamiento de aguas residuales no pueden operar en ese nivel de inundación, lo que significa es que es posible que tengamos que cerrar las instalaciones del noreste y el suroeste con el fin de evitar mayores daños a los sistemas. La decisión de cerrar estas instalaciones se tomará más cerca de la llegada de la tormenta. Esto significa que si se apagan las plantas para proteger los equipos, los residentes no podrán descargar, lavar la ropa o ducharse. La ciudad ha abierto un sitio nuevo para recibir escombros para los residentes y los contratistas. La dirección en este sitio es el 1953 72 Calle Norte. Si usted va a ir al sitio de escombros, por favor, traiga con usted su licencia de conducir o factura de agua como identificación que vive o trabaja en St. Petersburg. Esta es una tormenta muy grave. Ahora es el momento de prepararse y evacuar. Ya no tiene mucho tiempo.
Thank you, Yolanda. Amber.
Good evening. A powerful hurricane will make landfall on the west coast of Florida Wednesday night, currently forecast for a Tampa Bay landfall. This is the type of storm we've always called our worst case scenario. Wind and rain will be catastrophic, and that's not a term that we use lightly. If you saw flooding in Helene last week, we're expecting nearly twice that with Hurricane Milton. We've seen the devastation in our neighborhoods. We've seen the devastation on our beaches. This storm will be worse. So we plead with you today, if you're in an evacuation zone, A, B, C, or in a mobile home, regardless of evacuation zone, you must leave. You cannot be safe in these evacuation zones. Many of us are still hurting and working through recovery from last week's flooding with Hurricane Helene. We understand resources are very tight. Come to a shelter. Shelters will be open for you. You're welcome at a shelter. There's food, water. Pets are welcome at the Gibbs school. Come, we'll figure it out. We want everyone out of the evacuation areas and into a safe place. If you do have the means to leave the area, you're encouraged to do so. We often say evacuate tens of miles, not hundreds of miles. You don't always have to leave the area. With a storm like this is unprecedented. And I feel like we were just here, a week ago saying this is unprecedented. And unfortunately, we're in this area again. But it is. Almost half of the county right now is being ordered to evacuate. We have shelters open for people. There's places to stay. But again, if you have the means and you're able to safely leave the area, you also are encouraged to do that. But just know you don't have to leave the area. There are safe places right here in St. Pete. Finally, I want to encourage everyone, please check on your family, friends, your neighbors. If you do live in an evacuation zone, See what your neighbors' plans are. Do they need help? Do they have the means to get to a shelter? Are you able to help give them a ride? Do you have family and friends in a non-evac zone that you can bring them along? We really, really need to make sure that if you're in those vulnerable areas, if you are affected by Hurricane Helene, you will be affected by this storm, and much more so. You have to get out of those areas, and we're asking you to do that and to check on your neighbors, family, friends, and make sure that they have those plans to do that as well. Again, storm is not to be taken lightly, and we need each and every person to take care of each other and get evacuated out of these zones. We still have time. We're a couple days out. We expect, these conditions to start deteriorating, possibly as early as overnight, Tuesday into Wednesday. But on Wednesday, that's the time you got to be where you're out of the risk zone. So make those plans now. We have some time, and let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Administrator Gerdes, did you want to make some comments now or after the questions? Okay. We'll take questions now.
Hi, Mayor. Can you talk about the debris removal process going on? How many trucks are out? Where have they been? And how much has been picked up?
I'll ask Mike Jeffries, Administrator, to give us that information. Mike?
Thank you for the question. Because we are so laser focused on getting as much debris, I want everybody to realize that we're trying to get months worth of debris removed in less than a week. Because we're so focused on that, and we've contacted all of our resources, assets, all of our partners are working with us. We're not tracking it like we normally do. I can't tell you exactly how much we've collected. That's something that we're going to look to gather post-storm. But again, we're working with state, we're working with county, and all of our contracted debris haulers to get as much removed as we possibly can.
Mayor, can you talk about having the dual impacts here of these back-to-back storms? Obviously, this is really rare, but I can only imagine the strain on resources that it creates on your people resources, your firefighters, police officers, all of your emergency management team. Everybody has to be exhausted. Are you getting any sort of backup or support from other counties or nearby areas?
Well, as Mike said, having this back-to-back right after Helene puts it in a whole different stratosphere. As you said, we're trying to handle, 6 months of debris in 6 days. We fully understand the impact that having that debris on the street will do when Milton gets here. My team is putting a lot of pressure on themselves to try to do this. A lot of them have been impacted, even team members standing here today. I think last count we had over 150 employees who have been personally impacted. They're still working and doing the job. So we're concerned about the mental health of our employees, making sure that we make sure they have resources. We've done outreach to our employees to know there's help if they need it. But I can tell you the employees of the city of St. Peter are focused on keeping our city moving forward. And I'm very proud of the work they're doing.
What additional challenges do you have from an infrastructure standpoint? I mean, we're talking about this debris, right, that could be projectile. Is there any advice for people that maybe think, I've got hurricane-proof windows, I don't need to board up my windows, but given the debris that we're seeing on the street, are there extra things infrastructure-wise that people can do, even if they're not in an evac zone, given what we've already lost because of Helene?
Well, given that most of the debris is in those evac areas, I think moving out of those areas, as has been ordered now, is probably the best thing you can do. We can always replace things. We will be in rebuilding mode in our city and in our county for years to come, but you can't, recreate a life. And we don't want to lose any more folks simply because they didn't move. We have adequate shelter space. When the county calls the mandatory evacuation, they also site shelters throughout the county to handle that impact. We have that in St. Petersburg. We have transportation for folks with special needs to get you to a shelter. So that is our first priority now, is preserving life. And the rebuild is going to be something that we'll be dealing with for years to come. And we're capable of doing it. We are capable of building back in a more resilient way, a smarter way, informed by what we know about the impact of sea level rise and extreme weather in our environment.
Are you getting any reinforcements statewide or?
We're talking to everybody, and everyone is supportive, from the White House to our state partners. Our Chief of Staff, Dora Walsh, has been having conversations, as many of our team members have as well, to get us resources. The FEMA director, administrator is in town. We'll be talking with her in a little bit. And so everybody is on the same page and moving forward, trying to get debris moved, trying to get folks into evacuation shelters, and understanding the big job we have requires us all to work together.
My question is probably for Amber. responders typically can't go out tropical storm force winds, and this is such a large storm, and maybe we start getting tropical storm force winds tomorrow. Does that mean that there's a chance that first responders won't be able to respond to rescue calls for an extended period of time?
That's exactly right. This is why it's so important that we need folks to leave. We've been fortunate for these last few storms that winds haven't gotten high enough that to pull our responders off the roads. We were still able to do those high water rescue calls. With this storm and the wind speeds we're looking at, I mean, right now, Hurricane Milton is a Category 5. Expected to weaken a little upon impact, but still a major catastrophic windstorm. So that's why we said worst case scenario that we plan for. We have the wind threat, we have the water threat, and once those winds reach a certain miles per hour, it's too late to evacuate, and it's too late for us to come out to you. And we don't want those 911 calls that start flooding in of water's entering the house, what do I do? Because unfortunately, we just can't go to those calls. And we don't want to put anyone in that situation, and we don't want to put our first responders in that situation to have to turn down those calls. So important to evacuate. That's why evacuation orders are out now and giving people time to leave before the onset of those winds come and we get to that point.
Is there a scenario, is there a scenario in which those evacuation zones would be expanded, or are you feel pretty confident that A, B, and C and all mobile homes are going to remain?
So evacuation orders are from Pinellas County. They feel pretty confident. Last I spoke to them with the A, B, and C. I believe once we get into that 15-foot of storm surge areas when it would trigger further evacuation. So they're in constant communication with the National Hurricane Center to see if that would could happen.
Since evacuation zones are based on the, predicted amount of storm surge, what does that mean for residents that aren't in flood-prone areas or evacuation zones, but, it's a crapshoot if their home can handle 120?
It's a great point that you bring up, and so important for every household to take that into consideration. When we do our public education out in the communities, we evacuate based on storm surge. However, you have to take in the status of your home. And that's why we say if you live in a mobile home, no matter how new it is and how many hurricane straps you have and how high you've built your mobile home, you have to evacuate. It is not meant to handle these types of winds. And the same thing for any structure that you live in. If you have doubt about the integrity of that home, we encourage you to go to a shelter, 100%.
Mayor, I want to go back to what happened about the debris. You mentioned that residents should secure their debris. What does that mean? What does that look like? Should some residents, still count on maybe a truck coming by and picking it up? Because I just wonder what happens to all that debris if the storm hits. Would it, clog the drainage systems? Obviously wreak havoc. What's kind of the step here with debris?
I'm going to ask Mike to address that. I'll just reiterate, if you are in that evacuation zone, we're asking that your priority be to move yourself and your family out of that evacuation zone. To me, the debris is a priority, but second to keeping folks safe. So, Mike.
So that's a great question, and Mayor mentioned it earlier. If there's a way to secure the debris that's in the front of your home, try to do that. Try to use tarps if you've got netting, if you've got ways to tie it down and to keep it as secure as possible. The other thing that we're seeing out in the community, as quick as we're clearing a street, people are bringing more debris out to the curb line. We would ask everybody to stop doing that. Keep it inside the house, at least until we can get through Hurricane Milton. I think the other thing that I want to mention is we have so many new options as far as debris. Mayor Welch has empowered all of us to be innovative and really think outside the box, and we're doing things that we have never done before. We have a program that's on our website now where we have haulers that can get paid per trip if they go out and they grab a truckload full of debris. We've created a brand new DMS site that we've never created before. The other thing that I want to mention is we are going to have our city staff and we're going to have our contracted vendors out in the community as long as we possibly can. But there is a point when we have to pull them out of the community as well and make sure they're safe, because what we don't want to happen is we don't want all of the assets that have come here to help us recover. We don't want those to be damaged by Hurricane Milton, and then we're stuck with no assets whatsoever. So we will continue to pick up debris as long as we can. I can't give you a specific time that's going to stop. We're going to monitor wind, we're going to monitor the weather, but they will be pulled off when it's felt that it's unsafe.
Can we talk about the sewage plants possibly going offline, northeast and southwest? That would affect how many residents? Is that like 2/3 at that point?
Yeah, first, I just want to say good afternoon to everybody in St. Petersburg, and all of us are wishing and praying for your safety. And, you know, one of the things I want to get across to you is, look, we have a major hurricane barreling down on us, and that means there's a very high likelihood that you could lose power, you could lose potable water, and you could lose sanitary sewer. So please take those things into consideration as you're making plans. If you're in an evacuation zone, please leave. With the predicted storm surge that we have, we most likely will have to shut down 2 out of our 3 plants, which will affect about 66% of our customers. Now, if we do that, the toilets will flush for a while, but at some point they will start to back up. So when you're making a decision to leave, please understand, you may not have power, you may not have sewer, and you may not have potable water. So please be prepared if you stay.
Thank you all. That concludes our update. Thank you.